Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. We are delighted to have as our guest today, Dr. Iris Davis from the Healing Threads. And this is going to be what I think is one of my most interesting shows. But before we get into talking about energy medicine and being a medical intuitive, let me introduce our Brooklyn Savvy panelistas. We have Colette, Ellis, Phyllis Whitethorn, Nomiki Makrillos, and Dr. Maria De Longoria. And Colette, you're going to be featured on this show as well because of your work as a behavioral health coach and all the tremendous work, body of work that you've done in this area. So welcome to Iris. Welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. Want to talk
thank you.
Thanks, certainly, about energy medicine. And being a medical intuitive, if you can talk us through what that means, if you can define that for us.
I like to define energy medicine because I think it falls into that whole dialogue on this is a fraud, this is da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Let's talk about energy. And let's start with the basics. Let's go back to what kind of system of medicine do we have when we talk about standard allopathic and Western medicine. It's a form of medicine that's based on the whole issues of just biology, physiology, and Newton's gravity. Now, I don't know if any of you remember a man called Einstein, but we've been into quantum physics for some time. Mm-hmm. Okay. And quantum physics, Einstein said it so wonderfully. We are so limited to fully understand the capability of the universe. I'm just paraphrasing, because we are matter and we are limited by our ability as matter. So part of the huge dialogue that goes on not only falls into the cultural issues, it also falls into who decides and what decides what is a healing process. So energy medicine is actually talking about the fact that there are forms of energy, electrical energy. Don't you get an EKG? Don't you get an EEG? Haven't you ever heard of an EMG that measures muscles? And nerve conduction, et cetera, blah, 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 nerve conduction studies. So the only way that people know about medicine that's based on quantum physics is as a diagnostic tool. Have you used it? Or the only treatment tools are like lasers, TENS, that type of thing. But if you're talking about a PEF, a PET scan to look for cancer, CT scans, MRIs, or even a PEMF, which is used to change energy fields at the level of the osteoclast and the osteoblast in bone to change bone fracture binding and healing. So, and then they go right back and say, no, but no, for all treatment, we must do it out of the biology model. Now, let me just ask you, if I ask you if we were women 5,000 years ago, who was helping us birth? Usually other women who did know about the biology to some extent and the physiology of pregnancy and women's bodies, right? They'd already had a pharmacopoeia, they had technique, but they also knew about energy. And that's what we often talk about when we confuse. The only thing often you find in Western data is when you talk about acupuncture, because it's a very well-defined part of the traditional Chinese medicine pharmacopoeia. And it's very well documented. Thank goodness the Chinese wrote for as long as they did. But if you think that there weren't shamans all over the world in all traditions, and if you don't think there were root workers, as they call them back down home in Virginia, root workers, you see, that were on all communities and all places, that was another type of pharmacopoeia, and you better know what you're doing or else you could hurt somebody. So there has always been a tradition of medicine that was about trying to do the biology and the physiology, but also about some of the energy. Now, some individuals know about the way that energy can really be defined. So energy medicine is really this collective of measuring and trying to bring the body back to homeostasis. What's homeostasis? It's balance. It's trying to use whatever energies will bring a body back into homeostasis or balance. So, am I going too far? Am I getting too medicalese?
Well, I wanted to understand this idea that we are actually energy. We appear physical. We appear like we're in the flesh when in fact this is all energy. Am I correct in saying that?
Right, but it's matter. Remember,
Right.
E equals MC squared? You know, so when you're talking about, but people presume that because they can't see it, they can't feel it, they can't hear it, they can't detect it. A dog can detect much more sound than I can, but that doesn't mean that the sound doesn't exist for a dog. You know, there are senses that we have. When someone walks in a room and you haven't even turned your back and you say, "Hey, baby," you know who it is, don't you? That's part of their subtle energy field.
And talk about
that's part of your capacity to feel
read
a
it,
subtle
to read it,
energy
to read
field.
it.
Yes.
Because I'll give an example.
What happens when you walk down a dark street and all of a sudden you say,
yes,
what is that? That's a subtle energy field.
I noticed
so
that.
Everyone
Colette,
does that.
I noticed that, Colette, at the chamber, you know, some of the meetings we go to, and I didn't realize what the energy felt like until I realized it wasn't there anymore. I said, wow, these meetings had a certain feel to them prior to COVID. And now that we're coming out of COVID, they don't, I imagine it'll get back to some other kind of feeling, but the feel is gone. So please continue, Iris, please continue.
So there's mind-body medicine, right? There's biologically based medicine. There's energy medicine. There's manipulative and body-based practices. And there's whole medical systems. Think about that. How often do people, given the structure of our medical system, actually know about all the different ways in which you can treat and support someone? So often what happens is people are limited, unfortunately, but I tell people to begin with the basics. They're unfortunately limited by our insurance system, which will only do with biology-based medicine, unless it's for testing. So if it's for testing and it can make some money, then you are allowed to have quantum physics-based medicine. But what you want is a whole medicine. You're looking at a woman who started 38 years ago in holistic care, in primary care, community-based care that took care of the whole person. The person cannot be separated from their environment, their diet, what they receive, what toxins are in their environment, how they receive health care. Do they have adequate access to health care? And what are their beliefs and systems? And then you put in their genetics and their metabolism, all those types of things. Do you see this big soup working up? So you have to have spoons that are large enough to get through the whole soup and be appropriately used to bring about homeostasis. But every cell has an electrical signal. We still don't even fully understand all the electrical signals of the human body that makes up the human energy field. So if you really understand that the world and the universe is an energy field that cannot be fully defined except by quantum physics, then you start to really become clear that you are only getting pieces. And so you have to figure out how to make it whole. So whether we use the meridians of traditional Chinese medicine, the chakras that were primarily defined in the South Asian tradition, and are still, widespread. But those same chakras or energy centers, which we'll come to later, were defined by multiple traditions in multiple languages.
Can I ask a question though, Iris, when it comes to the being able to read it? Because as a medical intuitive, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a medical intuitive, you're able to sense these energies and perhaps diagnose from energy? And that's a question I'm asking.
That's part, okay, so as a medical intuitive, what I basically do is read the human energy field. And that's how they became this point of helping people to understand. You can't just throw the people come in and they say, I don't want anything to do with Western medicine. I said, I'm the wrong doctor. I'm the wrong practitioner for you. Because I'm going to send you to where I say the need. I don't throw out the baby, the bathwater, or the tub, and I keep the stopper.
Now, is there anyone who has a question on what Dr. Iris has just shared with us before we continue to go on?
I just wanted to say I find it amazing. It's very interesting. All the aspects and parts of physics and science, but what I'm hearing is the whole person, and that includes environment, culture, diet, all the things you mentioned, Dr. Davis. And I find that amazing because it's really looking at the whole individual from inside, outside, and in totality, really, if I'm correct, my understanding.
I think that's a wonderful summary, because what you're really doing is you're looking back and forth. Like when you talk about mind body, often you'll see mind dash body. Candace Pert, who coined that term, would not even separate them. She says what your mind is, your body comes. I mean, she just had it that close. She's the woman that helped define neurotransmitters. And I think it's crucial to recognize opiate receptors. And so, you know, like the body has this amazing capacity. Like we give out a drug, for example, right? Like we give estradiol to women, right? Estradiol is a form of an estrogen. But when the body gets it out, it says, okay, the uterus can have some and this one, because it has one function in the gut, a different function on the brain. It has a different function in our sexual organs and our reproductive organs. And the body can distinguish all that. See, we just kind of throw it. So that, like, if I give like Benadryl, everybody gets Benadryl. You know, the body changes the function of histamine at the level, so you can have a leaky gut if you've got too much in your gut, but if you have it in your brain, it's doing a different function. There is so much remarkable capacity and capability that we have to remember that everything functions at different levels and it vibrates at different energies. Coherence and resonance is really what energy medicine is about. To get to homeostasis, if you look at somebody with cancer or any form of disease, the cells that have that issue do not resonate. They don't vibrate at the same level as the other guys. So the other guys are all talking about, they said, well, let's see what we're going to do with them. What can we throw at them? We don't like the way they're acting. And there is actual group activity. You know, we just discovered fascia, you know, in terms of Western medicine. But if you work with people who've been working with fascia, which is a major way and a major transmission point for the immune system, they were just like, oh, you know, it's that little clear stuff that covers a muscle. I'm just trying to point out that we sometimes advance and we don't always clearly know. So I'm a clinician. And so what I went after was what brings about results. So I didn't want to keep giving someone ibuprofen if they came in with their back hurting all the time. So I started asking, well, what does that mean? And you know, you can have damaged joints on an x-ray, but that doesn't mean you have back pain. That doesn't prove you have back pain. Back pain comes out of a multitude of problems. It can be emotional. It can be physiologic, the way you sit, the way you move, the way you hold your body. It can be in the fascia. It can be in the bones. It can be from cancer. You understand? Are you starting to see how there can be multiple layers, one on top of the other?
I have a question, though, too.